Does it still count as sniping if you're using an LMG? I mean, it has a scope on it. I guess it depends on the range. But what I do know is that nobody actually uses the tank gewehr just for what it's actually supposed to be used for. Everyone just uses it as a way to get a bigger blood splat out of the infantry. I even said gewehr right that time. Many people will be proud of me in the comment section. Now, I know this gameplay is a little bit old, since the beta's been over for probably going on, what, like 3 weeks now? Something like that. But I wanted to talk about a few things involving the beta, and hopefully the things that I liked, and also a few of the changes that I hope to see before the game actually comes out. Now, obviously, these are just opinions of my own, and a lot of people might disagree, but I thought I might bring them up anyways, because everyone's entitled to their own opinion. So first off, I love the feature that you can be set on fire with a flare. The range on it, however, I think is a little bit too far. I mean, I was nowhere near that flare, and it set me on fire. I'm not sure the degrees, the temperature that those things actually burn at, but I'm pretty sure I didn't put gasoline on myself before I ran in that room. Another thing that I love, and something that I've always thought, is that a sniper is only as good as his secondary. And what I mean by that, even though I'm sure it's pretty self-explanatory, is that if you have a bad sidearm, chances are you're not going to last as long as you probably could. And using the 1911, I must say it's so satisfying. It's always been a really good sidearm for me. I've loved it in basically every game that I've ever played that has had it in it. And in Battlefield 1, it just feels particularly right. If you get caught out in the open and you've already shot your sniper rifle, chances are you're not going to want to bolt it again and shoot at the guy. Unless, of course, you have time or cover. But generally, most of the time, you'll take out your pistol and you'll either hip fire or you'll just aim down sights and shoot them that way. And the reason I bring up the pistols is because, particularly in Battlefield 1, I feel like DICE has done a really good job on the sidearms. There's been a lot of times in many other games where, let's say you're playing as a sniper, and sniper being my favorite role, as I'm sure it is many people's, because it's just so satisfying, that you'll pull out your pistol to try to kill somebody, and it takes too many shots, or the damage drop-off is just a little bit too much. So yeah, very well done job, DICE. On another note, talking about the tank gewehr, basically, if you pick this thing up at E, you can hold it down by yourself. It's completely absurd, especially since most of the time it's just going to be infantry coming in, or planes, but if you have a friend, you can just have them hop on the AA gun, which I will be talking about in a moment, and you guys can just destroy everyone in sight. In fact, I was just thinking, imagine armor-piercing rounds on this thing. I read somewhere that it actually uses 55mm ammo. Like, what? Now imagine with armor-piercing rounds. A man can dream. A man can dream. Obviously, using it against infantry is kind of redundant as it is anyways, but I think armor-piercing rounds would be just absolutely ridiculous against tanks and all that. Light tanks would just be a one-shot. Actually, in fact, I think they are a one-shot. But back to what I wanted to talk about before. The AA gun, as I'm getting lit up by it right now. They finally decided to try to take us out that way. If you guys have ever hopped on the AA gun, you will know how absolutely ridiculous they are in this game. Especially if you're using the one on the train, like I am here. It can go a full 180 degrees, so anybody above you, or even remotely in your vicinity, which the entire map is in your vicinity because they reach that far, you can hit them. Now obviously, and I completely understand this, the train's supposed to be used as a comeback tool, or at least one to at least attempt to help out your team so you're not completely behind. But if you have any half-decent AA gunner on it, no plane is going to be able to fly anywhere. Like, they're literally going to have to stay at E flag, because that's probably the farthest point on the map that you can't reach. In fact, I actually think I have a clip coming up here, I think it's this one right here, where this, I believe it's a bomber, goes straight up into the sky. We're talking top altitude in the game, and I'm able to hit him. Now, how is that fair for any plane? Like I said before, the train is supposed to be used as a comeback tool, but since it can actually move, and since most of the aerial combat is generally around the train tracks as it is, I think it's a little bit unfair. I mean, these planes can't get anywhere remotely close to me without me taking them out first. And on top of that, if you've ever been flying a plane and been hit by the anti-air, it is absurd. You lose complete control of the plane. You can't fly anymore. If you get hit with even a few and he consistently keeps on you, you're dead. Because it really messes up your controls, as it's supposed to, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just rambling, but I think it's a little bit over the top for damage. Especially only since you have to hit even remotely close to them because of the flak damage. Like I said before, this is just my opinion. Maybe a lot of people think it's balanced, but I think it's a little bit unfair. Now for sniping, I've been using the Russian 1895 marksman rifle, as I believe most people probably will. I personally liked it over the other marksman rifles only because it's got a little bit more zoom, and I like to sit in the back sometimes and just try to pick people off that way. I mean, I'm not one of those guys that just hops off their plane, goes into the mountains and, you know, sets up a tent, campfire, puts the pig on the roast and, you know, waits for enemies to run by. But sometimes you don't really have a choice because there's a lot of scouts on the point or something and you need to take them out from a longer range. It's a lot easier. Although, now that I mention it, that setting up the tent with the pig roast, that sounds pretty good. One other thing that I'm not a huge fan of is the scope flare from the sun. I know a lot of people probably like this, but I guess I'm more of a old school player. I loved it back when Bad Company 2. You'll probably hear me mention that game quite a bit. I'm such a big fan of it. It's such a solid game. Everything just felt skill-based, completely skill-based. And all the random stuff that you kind of ran into, where if you died from it, it felt like a nice little quirky thing to the game. You never really got upset, you just kind of laughed it off. That was his last war cry before he went off into heaven. You know what, for a little bit, let's talk about sniping. I know a lot of people are very satisfied with what DICE has done in Battlefield 1 and the sniping. For me, myself, it took me a long time to actually get used to how to snipe. Like I've said in a couple videos before this, I've never been a big fan of Battlefield 4, and I've never actually had a real chance to give to Battlefield 3. So the sniping in those games, I've never really tested. As far as Battlefield 4 though, I have played it a couple times, and the bullet velocity in that game and the bullet drop, I've said this before, I'll always say this, it looks ridiculous. It looks unrealistic. I'm pretty sure I've shot Nerf guns that have less drop in that game. But for the velocity in Battlefield 1, I think they've got it down to a science now. I really hope that they keep it this way for the future generations of Battlefield. I feel like if they had went backwards, it would have been the end of the series for me, and I probably just would have stuck with Bad Company 2. And I will always play that game, as long as there's live servers. It's an amazing game, and it's always felt really solid. Now, I'm not sure for a lot of people, but for myself, while I was playing the beta, I never really one-shot anybody in the chest. I know certain guns, certain sniper rifles, except for I think maybe a couple, actually one-shot to the chest up to a certain range, or you had a chance of doing it. I rarely got that. It was probably once or twice out of the whole time that I was sniping, unless obviously they took damage from somebody else. As far as the overall sniping goes, I really don't have any bad things to say about it. I think the velocity is really good. It took me a little while to get used to it. The drop is nice. At a longer range, it starts to drop off more drastically, which just seems a lot more reasonable. But if I had to complain about one thing, it's not even really to do with sniping. And this is what I mean by a sidearm being amazing. I would have died if it wasn't for this pistol. I know it. The only thing I have to complain about, it has nothing to do with sniping. It's just the game in general, and I think it's just overall something that's kind of coded into the engine. And that's the invisible barriers. There's a lot of times where I've been sniping and I'll be sitting behind a rock where I'll have like several feet of distance between my barrel and the rock, and for some reason the bullet gets blocked. I'm definitely the type of person that loves to hide behind cover and use it to their advantage. It is a Battlefield game and an FPS overall, and I feel like a lot of people need to do that. So when your bullets get blocked by rocks, it's a very ungratifying feeling. I hope people don't think I'm ripping on the game too much. I actually really enjoyed this beta, and I can't wait for it to be released, because I spent every single day playing the beta, and those were some pretty long days. However, I am really curious to your guys' thoughts. If you guys played in the beta, let me know what you guys enjoyed and if some things irked you, because like everything I said in this video is purely my own opinion, so I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.